Okay, so this part of the video I'm going to show you how, after you've cut it out, how to go ahead and transfer all of your notches, because I showed you how to mark them, but we also need to make sure we snip into them. That's how I personally do it. Or you can just go on the other side and make a line. Okay, so this one's already been cut out. Remember, we transferred our dart, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to sew that together here in a few minutes. Okay, so here with our pattern piece, when you're cutting it out, you take your pattern piece off, okay, you repin it. If you're using pattern weights, then just put the weights down on it, okay? Okay. Then you go ahead and cut it out. I like to use my pinking shears when I'm working with garments. It just helps it from fraying while I'm handling it, especially with soft fabrics. I just like to personally use my pinking shears. They're the ones that make these little zigzags on the fabric when you cut it. You could use regular scissors. I've used regular scissors as well. I just don't like to. I don't prefer to use them when I'm using something like this that can fray easily, because this is a woven fabric. If I was working with the knit, I wouldn't really much care either way. There's a lot of people that say you could use pinking shears to finish your garments, meaning you don't need a serger. And I'd say that just depends on the fabric you're using. I would say get a sample piece of fabric like this. Just get a scrap piece of fabric that you've already done the pinking shear on, and just sew a seam, and then put it in the wash a couple times and see if it starts fraying or not. My personal experience is it doesn't stop it from fraying after 1 or 2 washes. So I go ahead and serge or overlock or zigzag over my edges just to make sure nothing extra happens. So here on my my front of my bodice piece, there's a notch right here. You could barely see it. I could barely see it. And I cut into it just a little bit within the seam allowance. So in here is a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I go in less than 1/4 of an inch. Okay. Up here is another notch, and I snip in just a little notch. Okay, that's just for us to know our place marks, so when we go to take this to the sewing machine, we'll know where our side seams and our shoulder seams are supposed to meet. So, for example, when I open this up, this is pretty side facing up, okay? If I wanted to take this and put it together at my notches, then I can do that. Take the pins off this one. So see, this is pretty side, this is wrong side. This is why I said just do it with a pen, because you could see it a little bit. You could see my dart coming through the fabric a little bit, but if I did it with a Sharpie, it would really bleed all over the place, and you will see that on your final product. That's why I said just use a ballpoint pen, okay? Or a pencil. Pencils come out really well as well. So when you put these side seams together, these shoulder seams, you'll see that this notch matches this notch, and that's where you'll pin to put this together, okay? Same thing with this side, you do the same thing. Hold on, that's pretty side up. Okay, that's why I'm like, wait, but this is so pretty sides touching, and then you match up your notches, okay? It makes it a lot easier to match up those little clips, those little snips into the notch than it is just a marking. Because if you're using like a water-soluble pen or a disappearing pen or even a chalk or something like that, it could go away. So this way, even if I come back to it days later, I have my notches, I can come back to that. Okay, so here is like that. Now remember, we have to do our darts. Okay, so for our darts, here's what you have to do. Okay, so take one piece with the wrong side facing up, okay, and you need to match up those two dots. So those two dots that you made the triangle into, you're going to go into one, hold up your fabric, and then put your needle through the other one, and then just pinch it. Okay, and what you want to do is have it folded so that both sides of the needle go through this to each of the dots. You're matching up your dots, and up here your fabric then lays at the top of that dart, is at the top of that fold. So you're folding literally at the middle of that first dot, and then you pin through there. And then what I like to do, since I've already got it pinned through, I just come back up just a little bit and pin again. Okay, and you can pin again, like going with the seam, just to make sure that it lines up on both sides. So mine comes through on this side, but my marking on this side just got off a little bit, but you can see how my dot is actually not on the fold, it's a little bit below the fold. So then that's when you come up and you just make that adjustment to make sure that that dot is right at your fold, and you pin again. Okay, that's much better now. That's what you want to do when you go to the sewing machine. So when you get to your sewing machine, what you do is you sew from down here up. Okay, so you sew from here up. Just want to make sure that's nice and lined up and that's nice and flat. See right here, those seams come together. See that? That seam comes together. What you don't want is it looking like that when you start sewing. That's not going to look right. Make it nice and flat and make sure those seams match up. You start from here. You don't have to back stitch because this is going to be on another side seam. Oops, I took my pin out when I did that. You don't have to back stitch because this seam is going to go into the peplum. But if this was just a bodice and you weren't adding it to a peplum, or you weren't adding it to a skirt or a waistband, then you would go ahead and back stitch here. Okay, but this pattern we don't do that because it's not necessary. You can if you want to. And you start sewing, and then you sew off. You literally sew off the fabric, and then you pull it out and you make a long string. Then you tie it like a shoestring tie. Okay. I'm going to show you here what it looks like after you've done your dart. This is what it looks like after you've done your dart, and you press it towards the side seam. Okay, so look at that. Okay, so I just sewed right up to that, and I just sewed off. Okay, so this is before it's sewed, and then I sewed off, and then I just left it long. You don't back stitch. You give yourself a long string, you take your two strings, you tie a knot, then you clip it off, and that'll give you this nice smooth dart without having any puckers or anything through here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and prep my fabric for us to go ahead and get started in sewing it all together. So I'm going to make all of my darts. The directions also call for you to start from the side seam and do a stay stitch or a basting stitch, and it just reinforces this neckline. So just go through here at a 1/2 inch. Just make a line through here, and you make that out to all of your neckline pieces. You also do it with your front piece as well. So this is your front piece. What you would do is you start here, sew to there, stop, pull it off, start from here and go back this way and stop and pull it off. That's very important to make sure that our necklines stay nice and even, and they don't start drooping or sagging on us. Okay, so that's very important that we do that before we put on our bias tape and before we put on our side seams together. So go ahead and do those things, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to put this together. Oh, sorry, Before I do that, I'm going to come back and show you how we are going to make our own bias tape to go around these corners and around our armholes. How to make your own instead of buying store-bought. If you want to buy store-bought, that's perfectly fine. You can do that. I just prefer to make my own to match my fabric pieces.